Great. Okay. Well, an official welcome to all of you, and thank you for uh, meeting us at this Google Meet, the first of many webinars from the International University in Geneva. This particular webinar is about the use of digital media during this pandemic, the infodemic as well, as we've been calling it, and beyond. And just so you know, I have sort of an idea of what I'm talking about. I wanted to first introduce myself. Some of you do not know who I am. My name is Paige Holt. I am Chief Operating Officer of CNN Money Switzerland. We are a digital and broadcast media specializing in finance and business information in Switzerland. I am also an adjunct professor here at International University in Geneva, and I teach a communications course called Business of Media. I have about 20 years experience in the media industry. I started out in sales, moved into marketing and communications, and then into executive management. So what we're talking about today is how are companies using media during the COVID-19 crisis. And for this particular presentation, I wanted to focus on social media as opposed to the larger digital media ecosphere, partially because we only have an hour, and I could wax lyrical about digital media. Also because I think, especially in these crises, it's the social media that we're going to primarily, and it's also oftentimes the doorway into websites or other media. And talking about websites would necessitate probably a bit more technical information. We would probably have to talk about search engine optimization and things like that. So for our purposes, I'm going to talk about social media. And while I'm on the word social, we've been hearing about social distancing, but obviously we are absolutely not social distancing. We are physical distancing. We are putting physical space between us. But as I'm sure everyone has realized themselves, we are using a lot more social media and screens and internet and all types of communication, digital communication since COVID-19. And consumer behaviors have changed. If you did not have a Netflix subscription 2 months ago, you are probably do now or something similar. And if you were very reticent to do online shopping, well, you might have just given up and started doing it and realized how easy it is to do that. So we need to bear in mind that consumer behaviors have changed quite a lot during this crisis, and we'll see, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, how this will have some permanent changes in our behaviors. So maybe what I can do is first back up and give you a global context of digital consumption around the world. Now this is just a broad, just to give you a few figures. There are about 7.8 billion people on the planet. 55% of us live in urban areas, and so therefore have access to urban services. 66% of the world's population owns a mobile phone. Nearly 60% of us have access to internet. And there are a whopping 50% of us that are active social media users. So, half the world's population is into social media. This is a snapshot of last month and the increase in online and digital activities. Now, this is a report of people using these platforms, and it's these two companies, Hootsuite and We Are Social, are quite well known for the good information that they have, statistics, research, and analysis for social media and digital media in general. But if you look, obviously, we just talked about Netflix. Streaming films online is up by 57%. 47% people are spending more time on social media. Everything across the board. More music, we're streaming more music, we're spending more time on mobile applications. Surely some of us are using applications such as Headspace to get some calm and relieve our anxiety during these difficult times. Gaming is up 35%, and I mean, not necessarily surprising, but gaming is already a huge growth market, and we're going to see over the next 5 years a there's huge potential in this market, and that certainly indicates to me that quite a lot of us got into gaming during COVID-19, and we will most likely, or a lot of us will stay gaming in beyond the pandemic. And more people are creating and uploading videos. And something that surprised me a little bit was that even podcast listening is up by 14%. Initially, information out of the US was saying that podcast listening was down because people weren't commuting anymore. But I think probably people started missing their favorite programs. And so in exchange to the commute, they went walking around their neighborhood and listened to their podcasts, or while they were doing the dishes or cooking or other activities at home. So by and large, a huge increase across all platforms. And this indicates to a brand or an organization that wants to communicate that there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of different mediums that we can communicate on. This is another bit of information across generations. So you can see, obviously, across all generations, Generation Z, Millennials, Gen X, and Boomers, we all wanted more information on COVID-19. So there was an uptick in activity on news media sites and platforms. Interestingly, Generation Z was increased their music consumption quite a lot. But if you look, music, watching more movies, watching funny videos, all these things increased quite a lot. And this is interesting for a marketer who wants to attract a certain demographic, of course. If you're selling surf or skate wear, then you're going to look probably at the Gen Zs and what platforms they're using the most. If you're selling house insurance, you're probably going to look at Gen X. And if you're selling, upscale luxury travel, then maybe you're going to look at boomers. So this is all information that marketers are going to look at and see how they can focus their communication. Now, some brands have asked themselves, why would I communicate? Because a lot of brands are not selling anything right now. The travel industry, for example, we can't travel. So why would an airline or a hotel be interested in communicating now? Coca-Cola has lost a huge market because we can buy their drinks in the supermarket, but a large part of where they sell is in restaurants and summer events, the Olympics that aren't happening, things like that. So there's a lot of brands that just kind of thought, well, maybe I don't need to communicate, and many are saving money on their marketing budgets that way. But I would argue that you need to communicate always, and that this is actually a really unique time, a really unique opportunity for all brands and all organizations to communicate, particularly in social media where we are so active, because you have so many more eyeballs to attract to your brand and to your identity. So this is really a moment where we can develop communities, and that's what social media really is about, is developing communities. And then, of course, at some point we will be able to travel again and buy Coca-Cola at a soccer game again, and French fries and all these things. So you have to be aware that you need your brand to stay top of mind, and you need to prepare your pipeline for when you can go back into the market. Prepare that sales funnel, as I call it, so that you can generate very quickly. You can regenerate commerce with your service or with your products. And then the other reason that we need to communicate now, and we need to really think about how we communicate, is because today there are so many less points of contact between your stakeholders or your consumers, your audience, and you. We can't go to the grocery store and see a display of your product, or we don't see the posters on the street. We don't see the trams that are dressed with advertising. We don't see the digital screens in the train stations. So it's very concentrated now on handheld screens and PCs, and so therefore social media. And then you have to think about how. So I hope I've argued enough as to why you should be communicating right now. But there are two purposes for communicating for in terms of marketing or messaging for an organization or a brand. And one is commercial. That's you're trying to sell something, and the other is communal, which you're trying to create engagement. You're trying to bond with them. Sometimes these purposes oppose. One is more appropriate than another in certain times, and so that's what we need to look at today in this crisis: as how do we communicate? I would suggest that in a crisis, you're better off doing communal communication than just commercial. There are some exceptions. If you sell face masks, then maybe you're going to make a killing, and it's appropriate for you to advertise because it's been so difficult to find them. But for the most part, building a community and helping people to shelter at home, to quarantine, to self-isolate, to do all these things that we're doing now is probably your best bet to keep your brand awareness and your brand image at the top. So what I wanted to do now is take you through a few examples of brands that I think are killing it, that I think they've done a really good job, and then a couple that weren't so hot. So the first one I think is Nike, and Nike is a great communicator. They have consistently done a good job in developing communities. And I don't know if any of you saw this, but quite early in the epidemic, they posted this message. If you ever dreamed of playing for millions around the world, now is your chance. Play inside. Play for the world. And they hashtagged it with play inside, play for the world. They didn't hashtag it, just do it. They didn't hashtag it Nike together. They didn't even put the word Nike in there. And then very cleverly, they used all the celebrities that endorsed their products to retweet. So here we see on the right, Cristiano Ronaldo, who retweeted the message. Okay, he happens to have on a Nike pair of shorts, but otherwise he does not hashtag Nike. He just hashtags play inside, play for the world. And I mean, Nike couldn't have gotten a better boost than from people like Cristiano Ronaldo. Michael Jordan did the same thing. And very interesting conjuncture, because Michael Jordan is in the news right now A documentary you may have heard of, I think it's called The Last Dance, has come out in the US on ESPN. I believe it's on Netflix. So it's about him. This documentary is about him. It's just come out. So this is all has an exponential effect. And when you read this message from Nike, you're like, wow, that is cool. They're not trying to sell me anything. It's inspirational. It makes me feel good. So well done to Nike, in my opinion. The next one that I picked out for you today is KLM. And as we said, KLM, they don't have anything to sell us right now. Or it would be quite difficult, right? But they did have a huge emergency when they had to all of a sudden cancel flights. And the first thing they did, you can see the first post on the left, was from March 17th. And what they did was they actually put together a video of their own employees self-isolating, working from home, and each with a series of different employees, they put together these messages as to how they were going to take care of their customers. And so you see this gentleman here, he's in a t-shirt, he's got a cup of coffee next to him, he's probably in his living room, who knows, he might have kids next door like half of us. And it was just very personal, and you really felt like KLM was there for you. And then later on, they posted these other social media posts where you have, this is a real pilot from KLM who's representing there. He's facing you. He has eye contact with you, and they're giving you an update. And of course, they put together immediately a special website so you could get information and stuff. But they did a series of these where you see in-flight attendant, or you see someone that's in the desk service. So very, very nice, very personable. And then once that sort of initial crisis of after sales service was slowed down, they posted some really fun content. This one is very cute. These are two kids who built their a cardboard KLM plane. Turns out that their grandfather used to be a pilot for 20 or 30 years on KLM. So just really fun, cute content. They did a lot of photos of the bluebirds, their babies that were all parked at Schiphol Airport. So, no people, but lots of the bluebirds, and please take care of our babies and things like that. And so just a lot of interaction with their clients, and a lot of feel good kind of emotion. And then finally, I think my favorite is IKEA. IKEA on April 20th tweeted a special version of the recipe of their iconic meatballs. Now, IKEA is probably as known and as integrated into our lifestyle as Coca-Cola, right? So around the world, people know what these Swedish meatballs are. And I think they were so popular in the cafeteria when they served them that they actually started commercializing them. So kids love them, adolescents love them, parents love them. We all love the meatballs. And this is just them. They're basically giving their IP away. And that was just such a great idea, because not only was it really good, fun information for their clients, which is practically 3/4 of the planet, I would think, but every news media picked it up. So there was a second layer of communication, sort of public relations, because all the media picked it up. And then there was a third layer, because then you had a whole slew of bloggers, influencers, etc., who said, I made the recipe and this is how it went. And they're taking pictures of how they presented it, etc., etc. So this is just a fabulous way of communicating. And they've also done quite a lot on social media. On Instagram, they do these beautiful sort of mise en scène of different rooms if you're into interior design. I understand they put together a how-to guide on how to build a tent in your house with material you have